Call to order the City Council work session for the City of East Grand Forks. Tuesday, January 26, 2020 is now 5 o'clock. City Clerk, please call roll.
Mayor Steve Gander.
Here.
Council President Mark Olson.
Here.
Council Vice President Tim Rienthal.
Here.
Council Members Clarence Fetter.
Here.
Dale Helms. Tim Johnson.
Here.
Mark Demers.
Present.
Brian Larson.
Here.
Does term a quorum. Number 1, consider extension of Red River State Recreation Agreement. Reid.
Good evening, everyone. Council President, council members, the agreement for the campground is up for renewal. We had signed a 3-year extension a few years back. So I have included in the City Council work session that draft of the renewal agreement. As far as the main heavy points of the agreement, the revenue sharing, the operations of the campground, payment of expenses, the DNR is not recommending or suggesting that any changes need to be made to it. So essentially it's just an extension of the same agreement we've been operating under. There's a few language updates to the agreement regarding kind of operation, the necessary COVID preparedness plans with COVID-19 if that still goes on, some accessibility things, but those are more so related to the contract itself and the language in the contract. So in general, for all intents and purposes, it's an extension of the current agreement we've been operating under. I also included in the packet for you just a summary of the most recent financial year that we closed with them for the 2019 camping season, to show what the city and DNR's expenses were and then what the revenue sharing ended up being at the end of the year, as well as camping numbers, campsites sold for the last 6 or 7 years here. And you saw in those numbers that the 2020 season that just ended this fall was a pretty significant drop in campsites reserved. That's something I think we probably all expected. The campground opened late due to the COVID shutdown and a late start in June, as well as the Canadian border being closed, just a lot less traffic at the campground itself. So we weren't surprised by that. We have not got any preliminary revenue numbers from the DNR yet for the 2020 camping season, though that will come in the next few months still.
Do we have any questions for Reid? No, sir.
Mr. Olson, I think your mic is off, but I think I heard none.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
Okay,
Apologize.
thanks.
Move on to number 2, sir, if you want. Discussion and request for proposal on recreation facility improvements.
Okay, thank you. Again, we had a Parks and Recreation Commission meeting last Wednesday and discussed the recreation facility improvements and the planning process between now and any potential projects that could happen in the next few years. The timeline I proposed to the Park and Rec Commission is similar to the timeline that was included in some of the information that I shared with all of you as council members earlier in January, to kind of reinvigorate having the Park and Rec Commission help us with some focus groups and some planning, kind of looking at each of the projects, the ice arenas and the ball field improvements. Singularly, we had some good discussion as a commission, and at the meeting it was suggested by Council Member Larson that we may be at a time right now that it would really help in moving any planning forward to bring in a construction manager to help with pre-referendum and or pre-construction services as one piece, and then as well as that to bring in look to bring in a fundraising consultant that could do a study of our community and help to guide us in what kind of potential sponsorship dollars could be available, what kind of private donors could be in our community, that a fundraising consultant would kind of do a study of that, poll people in the community, gain feedback, and then be able to give us a suggestion of what a package would look like from sponsorship, as well as what kind of revenue we think we could generate with that for a project. So following the Park and Rec Commission meeting, I discussed it with Mr. Murphy. And before we would move forward with even putting together an RFP request for qualifications, we thought we should bring it to the whole council to see what your thoughts all are on it. And if you all feel at least we should move forward with one or both of them in seeking the qualifications and a proposal, then myself, Mr. Murphy, would begin to work on writing an RFP and bringing back proposals to this group at that time. So open to any feedback or thoughts on that process.
I do have one question, Reid. With those two different areas, would there be a firm that would handle both of those? Do you know?
That's a very good question. It's not one that I have a full answer for yet. I have asked the same question myself. I'm getting the feeling that there are some construction management firms that are starting to see that as a need in the fundraising side and being able to add that to their work portfolio. But I don't know the specifics of it yet, if that's something that one group could tackle. Mr. Murphy, Mr. Larson, with your experience, if you guys have any more feedback or thought on that at this point, I'd be, please feel free to jump in on that.
I guess I would say, unless we would really run across one that has a good track record on it, typically my experience with that is if they're good at one, they're maybe not so good at the other. They're both kind of specialized areas, and they're not overly similar. So unless we have one that has come across one that has a good track record of success, I would suggest that we look at two separate firms.
Larson?
I would agree with Mr. Murphy there. It's probably two separate firms. And then I would just kind of add my support. Reid summed it up very well. But we've got a future project here that has a very fluid scope and a very fluid timeline. And I think it's in our best interest to contract with a construction manager or potentially a construction manager at risk type contract for only pre-referendum services to help us to provide accurate cost estimates for all the different scenarios we're interested in, keep track of construction cost escalation as we go through this process, and really kind of keep us in check here as we go through this multi-year effort. One more item of note, Reid, I would recommend, and Mr. Murphy, as part of this, that there will be some contract value for these pre-referendum or pre-construction services. And I think it's probably in our best interest to specify what we're willing to pay for that in the RFP itself, rather than getting the proposals back from a number of contractors, and the numbers are all over the board. Anywhere, I could see $25,000 very easily being spent here. You may see other contractors bid $0 as a way of hedging their bet to get the contract and then recoup that cost. Others may want substantially more. I think it's in our best interest to kind of level the playing field and specify the amount that we're willing to spend with this construction manager. Thank you.
Mr. Demers?
Thank you. I would agree. I think getting construction management on board early is a good idea. My only question or concern is we had a previous agreement with JLG, and that's a design agreement, but they also kind of branched into some other areas. I'd want to make sure that we didn't breach that agreement, by, overlapping, especially on the funding and stuff. I think they had some stuff on how they were going to propose funding or whatever, but I would, like I said, I'd go forward with the construction management type thing, but just make sure that we're aware of the agreement that we had with JLG, or the current agreement we have with JLG. Thank you.
Reid?
Mr. President, just to respond to that, I have stayed in regular communication with JLG in a bi-weekly, just quick phone call and update on the status of the project, and they're aware that I was going to bring this to the council meeting tonight, and I think would be engaged in the process with us in even writing an RFP for construction management. So I would see this being able to move forward kind of in tandem with them on board as well.
Anybody else have any questions? Mayor?
It's just a little bit of an aside, Reid, but if you remember, we were at about this same stage when COVID hit, and about that time, you and I were going to sit down with the commander and maybe some management of the VFW, since one of our arenas carries their name, and just see what their thoughts are on our project, and make sure they're on board with the and maybe even into the future of what we could do back and forth with the VFW on this project. So whenever you decide that it's a good time for you and myself and maybe one of your board to sit down with them and just chat about kind of their thoughts on that venue, I'd be up for it.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate you bringing that back up to the front again. We'll make sure that we make that happen, Mayor Gander.
Sounds good.
Mr. Demers?
Thank you again, Mr. President. Just while this isn't directly germane to this, there is a deadline for sales tax issues again with the legislature that we aren't probably going to hit. Just wondering if we have an idea of what our sales tax timeline is, or is that for another discussion?
I think we're looking at the end of this January, but we decided to hold off until next January for approval next session. So the vote would be to the public in November of '22. So.
Thank you.
And to that point, the conversation went along the lines of, we're not quite out of the woods yet as far as, families and economic prosperity and all of that. It just feels like it'd be a courtesy to, let everybody get back on good solid ground before we launch into that next conversation.
Anybody else have any questions or any guidance or opinions to help out Mr. Huttunen and anything? I think what Mr. Larson brought up is put a dollar amount in there. I think it's a good idea so you can limit it. But bring something back and we'll take a look at it.
Just know that that's the number they're going to hit.
Right. Yeah, we can do it for 25. Yep.
They're all within $5.
Everything else?
Sounds great. I'll keep working at it and bring back more information once we have an RFP put together.
Sounds good. Number 3, request to schedule a visioning session. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me finish one thing here. I'm sending an email to Corey Thompson. It looks, we just received a message that the Facebook feed has failed. So, just kidding.
I can't go on to the next one either because you're on the next one. So
I'm just letting him know, so to try to get that back up and online. So, all right, I am back. So I guess for the 2021 visioning session, what I'm really hoping for tonight is that we can come up with a date here, hopefully in February, that will work for everybody to have our visioning session. What I'm looking at for this particular event is typically we do a review and revise and update the goals and priorities that we've set in our previous sessions, and then do some team building exercises to strengthen the council staff partnership. We have, I believe, might be the last 2 sessions we've done at a half day. We'll be finishing at noon. However, this particular session I would like to extend to a full day. Just due to the fact that with what we experienced with COVID-19 and the City Hall being shut down, people working remotely, emergency services, a lot of things have been affected by COVID. And I would like to do a debriefing exercise to look at that, and so we can look back and determine what we did correctly, what worked, what we can maybe continue, what we learned, what we can improve on. And I think it would be a very timely and very good use of our time of the extra half a day to go through that exercise. So with that, for February, the Saturdays that are available, we have February 6th, 13th, 20th, and 27th.
13th won't work, so that's President's Day weekend. So
Okay, so 13th is out. What about the 20th and 27th?
My vote would be the 6th.
The 6th?
You said you would not be, or you would want it?
That would be my vote. Towards the end of the month, I'm going to be working Saturdays, if not Sundays already.
How about, does that date work for the rest of the council?
I'll be out the 6th morning, but I can show up late. Or maybe the afternoon too, but.
I think everybody else is shaking their head.
Does that give you enough time to prep, David?
Yeah, I've got a lot of the prep done already. So that work. How about staff? Though I can't see everybody on here, so it looks like Reid, Paul, and I'm going to put Reid, Paul, and Nancy. Carla, Jason, how about you?
It won't work for me. We won't be in town.
Okay. Was that the weekend you're down? Okay.
Yeah.
Looks like,
I can only come a half day on the 6th.
the morning or afternoon? You're
Sorry, kind of in between. Like a 9 to like a 1.
okay.
I'm free on the 6th all day.
Keith,
I'm good, David. I can do it.
how about Charlotte?
She gave thumbs up already.
Okay. All right. It looks like then the 6th is probably the one that works for the majority. I don't know that we've ever had a meeting where we've actually been able to get absolutely everybody there. It's people have lives and whatnot. So, and I believe so that for the council, Mr. Demers, you said you can be probably half the day.
Depends. Probably after 1 if you're going after that.
Okay. All right.
Possibly.
Okay, and then it sounds like the rest of the council will work, because then, Clarence, you said the rest of the month is, you would not be able to make.
I mean, they'd be harder for me to make. They're not necessarily out of the ballpark, but. So if the
Okay.
6th doesn't work, then, the next one after the 13th would be my.
Seems like the 6th was pretty good for most people.
6 is good. Okay. I will plan for the 6th, yeah, and I will have enough time to get that done. So then, I guess then I will ask for the priority exercise, and if you could get that to me within maybe this next week, and I will incorporate that, and I think we will be ready.
Send out a calendar invite, please.
Yeah, I will, yep. Because that's a good point, thank you. I'll just let you know, typically we've done that in the training room of the DSC. However, if we have everybody in there, we will not meet the spacing requirements and the maximum occupancy requirements as they currently are. So what I'd be looking at doing is having 2 rooms. Either we either do 2 rooms, the DSC and the training room, or Reid and I are going to be checking out the community room in the senior center. It's possible that might meet the spacing requirements to get everybody in there. So it'll be one of those 2 options for the meetings.
There.
I do have kind of an odd request, and it may or may not be appropriate. But
So if you start with that, we already know it's not.
I say no.
I think the best post-event recap I've ever heard is at our fire department. Jeff Bushy and his crew, there'd been a fire that had gone crazy well. Nobody was hurt, property damage was minimal, and it could have been so much worse. A large structure could have come all the way down, and it went so well. And their habit at the fire department is to gather after every single event that happens and say, okay, this is what happened, and we're not going to cast any blame. We're not going to criticize anybody. Please know there's always something we can do better. So what went well, and what can we do better the next time something like this happens? What do we learn from this that we can carry forward? And honestly, the best of those that I've ever been part of was that day at that event. I wonder if as we go through this effort, if Jeff would be willing to just share even for 5 or 10 minutes what process they go through at the fire department, so we could incorporate something like that of our COVID recap. It was really done well, I felt. Thanks.
He gave the thumbs up that he would be able to do that.
Thanks.
Anything else in that, David?
I do not have anything else.
Okay. Move on to number 4, discussion on legislative day.
Okay, again, this is, the legislative day is tomorrow, so hopefully everybody has received the packets for tomorrow. I believe Megan has handed those out. The event does start at 9 a.m. tomorrow. We will be holding it in the training room. The staff looks like they will be Zooming in remotely from their offices or wherever they happen to be located. And we will have Up North pizza delivered for lunch, since we'll be here pretty much all day. And we have 3 lobbying efforts or times with our state representatives and state senators. So at 12:30 we will be meeting with Deb Keel via Zoom. At 2:30 we will be meeting with Carla Nelson, and I'm escaping this here. I believe she is the chair of the committee in the Senate side, to reference what we addressed earlier tonight, which would be the local option sales tax. Again, we're not pushing it for this year, but we want to make sure that they are still aware of it, that they have it in the back of their mind that we will be bringing it back, not this legislative session, but the next legislative session. And I have had some brief discussions with her on that, so I think that will work. And then at 4 p.m., we are meeting with Senator Johnson via Zoom. So I guess I would say for the council members, particularly after we meet with Deb Keel, our next one is not again until 2:30. If you would like to break and head out for the day, to work with your day jobs, and that certainly you can, because you would be able to Zoom in remotely from your location. We'll make sure you have the link so that you can come in, so you would not have to stay here through the full afternoon. So I guess with that, I will take any questions from the council or department heads.
Anybody have anything for Mr. Murphy? And remind everybody what time that starts tomorrow?
9 a.m. And I believe Ms. Nelson has submitted the orders for food tomorrow. So
Yes, she has. Also, you sent an email out if you're not going to be here to register, so you can get the link for the coalition, correct?
Correct, yep. And that's just for the coalition part of it. And I believe that ends at noon there. Then they have, if you want to come in, they do have that virtual happy hour later. But so you would need to log in through the link through the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities by registering for the morning session. Afternoon session are Zoom meetings, and I believe I sent out the Zoom links to everybody. If you have not gotten one for either Representative Keel or Senators Nelson or Johnson, please let me know and I'll make sure you get that.
Megan, do you have packets you need to give out to people before they leave today if they're not going to be here? Or do you
I'll
not?
run up and grab them.
Okay.
It's the handout that they sent out today.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Anybody else have anything with Mr. Murphy on that?
Nope, sorry.
Don't jump the gun, Mayor. I know you're there. Mayor Gander.
Okay, so we're done with our agenda. I did have a couple of conversations with businesses, and just wonder, Mr. Gordy, if you would please just give us a little recap again on the programs that we're administering now to help fund our businesses, and as best you can, some of the timelines associated with each one of those, if you'd be so kind. Please.
Thank you, Mayor.
There are several programs that are ongoing right now. In particular, we have 3 programs that are closing this Friday on the 29th. One is for county businesses located in the county, and these are state funds administered by the county that are grant funds. Also on Friday are state funds administered by the county for the benefit of city businesses. There's $200,000 set aside by the county to help city businesses. As I said, those are grants. And in addition, on that day, the $260,000 forgivable loan program also closes. The EDA plans to, the loan committee will be meeting on the following Wednesday, February 3rd, making recommendations on the dispositions of the dollars. The following Tuesday, the EDA will make decisions on those recommendations. So that's on Tuesday the 9th. On the 11th, I will take the recommendations concerning the county dollars to a meeting with the county, because that will go to county board action on February 16th. On February 9th, with regard to the local forgivable loans, the EDA will be able to make their decisions on that day.
Thanks, Mr. Gordy. And I understand from our previous conversation today that you are in a little bit of a back and forth dialogue with some of these businesses wanting to get the final documentation needed to complete their application. So please, if any of those businesses are listening right now, we don't want this window to close. We don't want these funds to go without you being one of the recipients. So if Mr. Gordy has said he needs proof of this or to show collateral with that, please honor those requests. Your application is not complete until those items have been properly turned in and documented. We want everybody who's going to qualify to get it. When these funds are gone, we will not be able to come back in 1 week or 2 weeks and say, well, we missed you, we'll go back. So to everyone who could qualify, please make sure your application is complete by the deadline, including those items that in conversation back and forth have been indicated as to complete the application. Anything else, Mr. Gordy?
No, sir.
Paul, I did receive your thing on the LISC Rural Relief Small Business Grants. I went to it. Communities under 50,000, the businesses do qualify. Just a matter of completing their application and getting it in. So that's a fourth program that is available. And there's pretty good funding in that one.
The Small Business Administration has also been enabled by the most recently approved COVID relief bill in Congress to provide some relief on some existing loans and provide advantageous terms on loans as well. And I will be trying to get that distributed to everybody within the next day or so.
One more thing, as I've talked to these businesses lately, several of them are right down to the nub. They spent their cash, they've maxed out their lines. I'm really, really thankful that we've put together the funding that we have. And it's going to start to pop here in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I would think, maybe 4 tops. And it's going to be, I think, just what they need to get over the hump, and as they reopen and the patrons start to return. So thanks again to everybody who's been involved in putting these together, to the EDA board who came up with the final program. I think it's just what these folks are going to need. Thanks.
Right, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move.
Moved by Better. Second by Reid. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Means adjourned.
I'll go get those packets.
Yes.